played in the World Cup quarter-final, lost to a handball, and I lost in 2 FA Cup finals by an own goal, which are tough ones to take, but they pale compared to Anderlecht in terms of hurt. And we had a chat one morning, and he said to me, it's Harry again, Harry Darn, he says, people don't forget. So I don't forget about football. I don't forget that I was losing a League Cup final 1-0. And you got my lad a penalty, you got my club a penalty, you got me and my club and my lad a penalty. He scored at Wembley because you got brought down at Wembley in the final. I don't forget that.
And Hodge has reaped the benefit here. Chapman up with him. But Hodge needs no help.
I grew up in a place called Gedling, which is probably 5 miles from the city ground, in the early 60s, so I mean that's obviously a long time ago. But as a 60s baby, obviously got to about 8 or 9, and my father brought me to a few games in the 71-72 season. I think that was the season that Forest went down that year, unfortunately. But we used to come on the old East Stand, which is obviously Brian Clough Stand now, when it had a corrugated iron roof, and the away fans used to be behind you, all stood up, which could be scary at times. But I'd be on the front near like a wall with a little box to stand on, and I was about 8 and 9 with my dad, my granddad, and one or two other family members. So and then walked down Collick Loop Road. Over the bridge, which is there now, obviously a brand new bridge now, but the bridge now had a big hole, and on the big hole in this bridge you could see the Trent right below you, and all the people wander across there on a match day, but obviously the floodlights were ahead of you, so it was an exciting time to, as a kid, 8, 9 years of age, to go and watch First Division football. Brian Clough's first year. I met him actually at the ground with my parents when I was about 15. I signed the forms on the same day Chris Woods became an apprentice. Same day, our parents met at the same time. I had a glass of champagne or whiskey actually, with Brian Clough in his office, I think it was. And he was a big personality. And he was somebody, I suppose, who gave you belief that, you know, he was always going to do well. His teams are successful wherever he went. So as a young kid, you want to be on that bandwagon, hoping you can jump on it sometime and maybe have a little piece of it. But for the majority of people, it never happens, you know. But you just try and get stay on the train if you can, and stay on it as long as you can. I got in the last game of that season at Portman Road, Ipswich Town away. I went down on the bus thinking I was 14th man, and we had a Friday where you'd have the team sheet go up on the board, and it went up, and I was like at the bottom of the sheet. It was like 1 to 11 was the team, then you'd have 12, and then 14 was like kit man, team maker. But I didn't give a damn. I was in the squad last game of the season, so nothing to lose. And I was then 19 and a half, and I felt as though I'd probably earned maybe a chance of it, you know, at least one game. And we were playing Bobby Robson's Ipswich Town, who on that day, if they'd won the league and Liverpool had lost, they were champions. So it was a big game for them. And they had, you know, a back four of Mick Mills, Terry Butcher, Russell Osman, George Burley. It was a great team. Paul Marin, Alan Brazil, Arnold Muren. You know, they were a top team. So pleased to be in the squad. I went down as usual. I made the tea on the way down. You keep your mouth shut, listen and learn. And the day of the game at about 10 to 2, Cloughie strolled in and he went, young Hodge, put number 9 on today, son. Today, son, you're playing for me at centre forward, young man. And that was it. I couldn't believe it. I thought I'd just be there as kit man, basically, and T-boy. And I was playing as a striker. And I played left wing for the reserve team for 2 years, or central midfield. I mentioned before I've been a striker as a kid, so I got a little idea about how to play it, but I didn't give a damn. I was playing with Peter Davenport up front, who I knew from my reserve team days, and we won the game 3-1. And in a blur, I played striker, and I ran around as you would do. I was enthusiastic. I made one goal near the end for Peter Davenport, and then after about 70 minutes, I got took off. I was shattered, mentally and physically shattered. But it was a wonderful day. It's a day you won't forget.
The following year started really well because you got your first goal and goals for the club against Liverpool, 2 against obviously a massive, massive club. Yeah. What were your memories of that day?
Scoring 2 at Anfield, oh, blimey. They were European champions. I remember walking out and seeing Graham Souness and thinking, he looks tough. I might keep out of his way today, he looks tough. Because he was renowned as being tough, and he did put it about, but he was a wonderful player. His record would tell you that. But their team was frightening. You know, Rush, Dalglish, Souness, Craig Johnston, Sammy Lee, Phil Neal, Alan Hansen, Mark Lawrenson, Alan Kennedy, Bruce Grobbelaar, could reel them off. And I scored 2 in the Kop in the first 35 minutes, I think, of the game it was. So that was just like, I remember scoring the first goal, running towards the halfway where Cloughie was, and just ran. I'm just so unhappy that Match of the Day was there from the first game, but for the first goals they weren't there, 2 in the Kop. But I kind of arrived that day, really. Not arrived, but in my own head I thought I've scored 2 at the Kop at Anfield against the champions of Europe. So I've got something. It does give you a bit of confidence, because as a kid you always think, can I hack it in there? But when you do that in a proper game against a proper team, then you do get great belief from that. Even though we lost the game 4-3, and Ian Rush scored in the last minute, I remember that one. And we got used to that kind of result at Liverpool over the years, because they were that good. But yeah, that was just well, you know, the first goals to be 2 in the Kop at Anfield, and your third game doesn't get much better than that, really. Either we lost the game, you know, which is the sad thing about it. But you know, my first goal down here was against Birmingham, a 1-1 draw. I remember that, right-footed shot. But that was my game. I could score goals. I was encouraged to get forward by Cloughie. You know, I had Ian Bowie, the old stager, alongside me, and knew the game. He'd won everything, and he was my mentor, Ian Bowie, for years. I learnt so much off him as a midfield player, and how to read a game, how to carry yourself on and off the pitch. Just as a professional footballer, I learnt so much off Ian Bowyer.
Davenport. Hodge taking over nicely. And this is Bowyer. Oh, I say that's a beautiful shot. Ian Bowyer, the Forest captain, makes it 2-0.
Robertson curling it in. Up goes Anderson. The header from Hodge. 1-0. Peter Shilton beaten, and Steve Hodge has given Forest the
lead. For me, as a young kid playing in Europe, going to behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany, Vorwärts was an experience in itself. Dimly lit place on the Polish border, going to PSV. And getting battered for an hour, winning the game 2-1. And they had people playing the World Cup the year before the final. And the Van der Kerkhoff brothers had played in their team. Arie Holm was a Dutch legend. And we beat them away in the Philips Stadion.
And then it's Celtic in the 3rd round. What a fantastic fixture that is.
It was. I mean, back in those days, it was very rare for an English team to play a Scottish team in a European competition. So, yeah, it was tasty, but the atmosphere down here, you know, it's sometimes a bit, sad's the wrong word, but sometimes when we get 30,000 down here, it still doesn't get that tingle of a European night when the Trent End was packed, and I mean to the rafters, and nobody could sit down. It was everyone stood up like sardines, really. But I remember that night, we'd heard rumours. It was a freezing cold night. The game was a joke. It's never been played in the first place. It was just a bone-hard pitch. But there must have been 20,000 Celtic fans in Nottingham Town Centre the day of the game. They had to play it. There was just everywhere. And you know, I've got a DVD actually of that game that night, and you can probably see 3/4 of the ground is just green and white. It was just like, I've never seen so many away fans in this ground ever since, apart from that day. And they made a racket for 90 minutes in an awful game that ended 0-0. And I remember before the games, the European games, Cloughie used to come in and say to us, lads, I'm not bothered about anything else tonight, all I want is no goals against. That was his big thing about Europe. You probably don't realise the hurt that night cost or felt for people of that age and that era, really. Because people say to me about, you know, I played in the World Cup quarter-final, lost to handball, and I lost in 2 FA Cup finals by an own goal, which are tough ones to take, but they pale compared to Anderlecht in terms of hurt. And I mean that genuinely. Compared to a handball in a World Cup quarter-final, which is on a football pitch, which sometimes people try things and get away with it, then I can accept that to a certain degree. I can't accept people being bribed. That's what I can't accept. And you know, to this day, that I can't have any sympathy at all to Anderlecht, even now to this day, for what they did, you know, 30 odd years ago, because it still rankles with me now, and it will forevermore that we never got a medal, didn't play in a European final, and they had no need to do it. You know, I've learned over the years that there's lots of things going off in the Belgian football at that time, apart from our game, which weren't the best of practices in Belgium at that time. But for our fans to get on ferries and boats and trains and us to fly out there and prepare for 3 days when it didn't matter. We were already out, and we didn't know that at the time, but we were already out. That still rankles. I don't feel as though we were given justice for what happened that night. It's not me being an old bloke, you know, a veteran footballer, because I got beat in some of the biggest games and took it on the chin, as you have to. It's just the way that turned out was utterly wrong, and they were given a 1-year ban, which was eventually overturned. So they had no punishment whatsoever. And they played against Spurs in the European UEFA Cup final. Thankfully got beat on penalties by Spurs. But you know, it was another night of a horrible atmosphere, a bit poisonous. I'd scored 2 down in the last 10 minutes of a semi-final. You know, 2 headers at the Trent end. The second of which was the best goal I ever scored in my career, a diving header. And we thought that probably would be enough, but we had enormous respect for this team. They had a lad called Enzo Schifo, who was a brilliant player, played for Belgium 80 odd times. They had lots of Belgian players who got to the World Cup final 2 years later, or semi-final in Mexico. So we had huge respect. Wouldn't be easy, and they were more technical than Celtic were, so they could undo you. So in my eyes, they had no reason to want to cheat to get to the final, but they made sure anyway they would be in it. And on the night, Schifo scored in the first half, great goal. You can't stop that. It's talented boy. Well, the second was a penalty, which a guy called Kenneth Brill, I think he was Danish, dived, and I must have been 2 yards from where Kenny Swain was, and Kenny just brushed him a little bit, if that, and the lad, as they do, went down, you know, theatrically, and I'd have been 2 yards away from that. And straight away you're thinking, careful, because this guy, as a referee who I could moan with the best, you'd moan at him and he'd go, shh, one of them jobs, go away. So you knew straight away not to even talk to him, because he looked one of those that you couldn't go anywhere near. And you had to be careful in Europe, because they did generally favour the home teams, is human nature. So you know, the penalty was given, which wasn't a penalty, and then it's 2-2 with 20 minutes left. Momentum's with them. You know, their fans can feel it now. But Cloughie had actually questioned the referee the day before the game in the press, as though he knew something was a bit amiss. Maybe he did, I don't know. I found that a bit odd, to be fair, why he said that. In hindsight, probably he was right. And then they get the third goal, a guy called Erwin van den Berg, played for Belgium, great striker. And we go out 3-0. And the final whistle goes and we're in the changing room. And we've been followed by, or helped by a courier fella all the way around, like a UEFA one who goes with every team. And after the game, I remember him saying to Brian Clough in the dressing room, "Mr. Clough, I think you've got grounds for complaint tonight," which was a UEFA official. And Clough said to him, "Young man, I've not complained about a referee in 20 years. I'm not going to start tonight." But he knew, I think he knew. I didn't know at the time. Decisions we got in the game were big decisions when everyone went against us. And we'd get throw-ins, which didn't matter. You know, the things just didn't matter in the game. We scored a goal. It's a well-known thing. Paul Hart scored a goal. Bang on 90 minutes. We would have made it 3-1 for a header from a corner. And by then, Clough had seen that my head had gone by then. I'd been booked. It'd taken me off. I'd lost my head. I remember being on the bench and the corner went in and it's like 3-0 on the clock, 90 minutes. And the corner goes in and I heard a whistle. As soon as that kick was taken, I heard a whistle immediately go from the referee. And I switched off because I thought that's dead. Now the bench around me had not heard that. Obviously people had not heard it so much. Ball goes in and the header goes in from Paul Hart and it goes right in the corner. And there's a bit of bedlam and everyone gets up from our bench thinking it's 3-1. That's enough. And I didn't move. I'd heard it initially. Straight away it was kicked because the referee was not going to allow any possibility of that there'd be a header from one of our players get anywhere near that box because his job was done by them. So, you know, when you, on reflection, when you go back, you know, the corner, the penalty they got, you couldn't talk to him, Cloughie in the papers, you know, the signs were there, clearly there, but as a young player, you hear about Europe and you think, well, it goes off, we know it goes off, but you can't prove it. But obviously it was proven eventually. In the press it came out, but he got 25 grand to throw the game, which was for me justice. I'd realised it was right, and that night we were totally cheated. The door opened to his office and I walked in and he just said to me, "Did I say something you could come into my office and just sit down in my chair?" So I said, "No, Gaff." He said, "Right then, piss off." So I turned out the office again and kind of came back round again and knocked on the door, and I walked in and then I just stayed where I was. I didn't sit down. And he says, "Son, have a seat in my office." So then I sat down. It was just all pure Clough stuff, making you feel that small in his office, making you feel under pressure really. And then he just said, "What do you want, son?" Even though he knew. And I just said, I want a transfer. And he said, I need it in writing. And I got it in my pocket and I just said, being a bit smart about it, "There you go, read that, you know, there you go." So I read it and I remember walking out and he went, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm getting off now." He went, "Hang on a minute, son. Because before you go today, you need to know that from now on at this football club, whatever happens to you, he stressed it, is because of this letter. Do you understand that, son?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." He went, "Right, go." Pre-season '88, I got a call from Alan Hill. I think Alan Hill rang me up to say, "We've agreed a fee. You can come up tomorrow and speak to the manager." So I did that. We talked terms. Terms weren't great, to be fair. He knew he knew I got nothing to part with. And we actually walked away from the deal. I walked away because it was without wanting a fortune. It was being ridiculous what I was being offered. bearing in mind I was an England player, been to a World Cup by then. I went home and I got a phone call from Brian Clough, and he went to me, "What are you doing?" I went, "Oh, I don't think the terms are what I need at the moment." I knew there was 2 or 3 other teams at the time sniffing around anyway that wanted to come back here, and he knew that anyway. And he went, "Come back and see me in the office in about an hour." So I came back, and he had a contract on the desk for me. And he went, "There it is. It's 3 years. I think it's what you'd like. Sign it." So I looked at it and I read it, and I think it was £10 more than what I was on at Tottenham. He just made it a little bit extra to say, "Well, we do value you. We want you to come back here. Let's do it." So I was happy with that. I wasn't being greedy. I wanted to come back here, just have some worth. And I was 25. I had the best years I thought ahead of me anyway. So I signed that night, and happy to be back. So it was just a case of bedding in again, getting in the team first initially, and making a mark. And just I felt nervous coming back. I remember my first game was Norwich away. And bearing in mind now, I came back as a non-England player. I was in the out squad at the time, and Webby was in the squad, so as was Piercy and Des. And we were at Norwich away, and we got off the bus about a mile's walk from the ground. He made us walk with the fans to the ground at about 1:30. And at half-time I came in, I think it was 1-1 at half-time, 1-0, and it had gone all right. Although I remember being nervous, thinking I want to play well today because I've got to prove myself again, really. And Fluffy came in at half-time and looked at me, and he went, because he called me Harry by nickname, and he went, Harry, darling, when you get the ball, give it to Neil Webb. He's a good midfield player." I remember thinking, "Oh, cheers." And it was just him putting me in my place again. Got beat in the FA Cup final 3 years prior with Spurs. I didn't want to lose again. We were favourites on paper. Luton streetwise team: Mick Harford, Ricky Hill, Brian Steen, Mal Donaghy, Les Seeley in goal, Ashley Grimes, some streetwise old footballers who knew the game really well. And we had Lee Chapman up front, and we had a slow start. And Cluffy said before the game, whenever before we went out, he said to his lads, "Whatever you do, leave nothing in here. No energy, no whatever you're thinking, no negative vibes. Go out there and go and play." Which sounds simple, because in those days there was no sheets on the changing room of like set plays, and we didn't do set plays, which nowadays will be laughed at. We knew our shape. We were 4-4-2. We played 2 wingers. It was just dead simple. Nigel came into the hole, and we conceded near, I think after half an hour, Mick Harford scores a header. And we came in at half time, and there was no real panic. It was just when Cluffy just said something like, "Just play a bit quicker, bit more tempo, pass the ball quicker," which was just our way. And the second half, I did what I had to do. I had to get forward and get in the box, and I made a run down the side, down the channel, pass from Webby, and I saw Les Seeley flying out towards me in the box, and I just touched the ball by him, and I just veered a little bit towards him, and he was bound to hit me, and I went down. It was a penalty. It was a clear penalty.
You'll be disappointed with that.
Well, let's just see whether you'll be disappointed with this as well. It's 1-1.
there'll be a father sitting on the bench for Nottingham Forest who'll be greatly relieved by that. So the red and white flags have come out, and the banners with them, the inflatables too, and Forest are back in business. Plenty of red shirts forward, and Neil Webb is further forward than any of them. There's Webb! A brilliant goal for Forest, and that's 2-1. And here's Tommy Gaynor. Chapman again made a good break for him, getting towards that 6-yard box. There's Nigel Clough again! It's another one! Rangers, Bristol City, and now they beat Luton Town to take the 1989 Littlewoods Cup. Brian Clough's first trophy since Nottingham Forest won the European Cup back in 1980. The cup is back at Forest.
I saw Cloughie in Bridgeford probably when he retired, in his shop, paper shop down there, and we had a chat one morning, and he said to me, it's Harry again, Harry Dawn, he says, people don't forget. So I don't forget about football. I don't forget that I was losing a League Cup final 1-0, and you got my lad a penalty, you got my club a penalty, and you got me and my club and my lad a penalty. He scored at Wembley because you got brought down at Wembley in the final. I don't forget that. He says the fans might forget that. They'll think, oh, Nigel got 2 goals. He says, but I don't forget that we were losing 1-0 and you got us back into the game. It's just like, that's what he was like. Little things he would remember 10 years later. But that was a big final for all of us, and for him, he'd been 9 years without a trophy, and he'd been without Peter Taylor. Now he'd won a trophy on his own. I remember the players on the pitch at the warm-up saying, I remember we were talking, saying, their end's not packed today, it's a bit odd for Liverpool. Now, bear in mind, we were a smaller club than Liverpool, and we'd been given the Kop at Hillsborough, and our end was packed at 2:30. And it was odd. It was mentioned by the players that behind their goal to the sides of it, it was empty. Which semi-final in the FA Cup at 2:45, that's not normally, it's Liverpool. It's not your average team, it's Liverpool. Obviously the game starts. It's currently probably 2 of the best 3 teams in the country. The previous year had been the same semi-final in the same venue. So it is a high-profile game. I think Beardsley hit the crossbar in the first 2 minutes, and then I remember a guy walking by me with a Liverpool scarf on about 3:05, and he just said to me, Steve, sorry, but he said, but there's people dying over there. And I didn't believe him. I kind of just didn't say anything really. But we've been aware behind the goal, there've been scuffling of people behind the goal, next to the fences, and lots of cameras looking that way, and there's lots of police presence behind it. So we were aware something was wrong behind there. But we'd had Celtic down here 4 years prior to that, whenever it was. And on that night, there'd been a pitch invasion in the corner where it was massive Celtic fans, and they'd all pushed forward, and there was trouble that night. And you'd see it occasionally at other grounds where people were just squashed in. So a minute later, the referee, I forget his name now, he just blew his whistle and said, lads, we've got to go off. But by now he'd realised there was a lot of people lying on the ground behind the goal, a lot of police over there. And we just turned towards the changing room there, and everyone just kind of walked, but walked while looking back. Because it was unusual. It didn't seem like your usual crush. It just, people were being taken upwards to the upper, tiers of that area. People were being dragged up, and he just thought, that doesn't look right. It was a strange one. It was at Old Trafford, and we talked about it. We talked about the fact that it was for our fans, it was for our families and ourselves to get to an FA Cup final. It wasn't our fault what had happened, and we approached it in the right way. You have to bear in mind it's a red hot day, and we were playing against a team that was seriously motivated that day. And we knew the crowd and the country wanted us to get beaten, but you know, we'd been to it all over Europe and Scotland and had that scenario. That wasn't a problem. But on the day, we had a bad start. I think they scored in the first 5 minutes. John Barnes, I think, scored. And we couldn't cope with the ferocity of their motivation that day. And they were talented players. They were the best team in the country, possibly in Europe at the time. And to our credit, we equalised after about an hour. We didn't cave in. You know, we could have got beat 3 or 4, I think, conceded in the first 5 minutes. We got back. Webby scored a goal, and then they got a corner. I think probably about 20 minutes to go. And I remember being stood on the post at the Stretford end, and the ball came in, and Aldridge scored. And I don't think I've ever heard a bigger roar behind me than when that ball at the back of the net. It was deafening. But that was their end. They had the whole of that end, the Stretford end. And once they got the noses in front, no, they were going to win then. But, you know, we were sad for our fans and for ourselves, but we couldn't begrudge them playing in the final against Everton of all teams that year. We won the game 1-0. I got a second winner's medal. And I loved it, loved the whole day. We got a clean sheet and it was just a perfect day. It wasn't a great game, but I loved it. And I remember Joe Roll, the manager came by me after the game and said, well played today. He said, you kept our 2 midfield players who were workhorses, a guy called Mike Milligan and Nicky Henry. Names you probably wouldn't know, but Oldham had a good team then. They were in the first division a lot with Joe Royle. I remember Joe coming to me after the game just saying, well played today, Steve, you kept our 2 quiet, which takes some doing. And I was happy with that. The other manager thought I'd done well that day. But yeah, it was just good to be at Wembley again and retain. That's a hard thing to do, retain a trophy at Wembley. The last year of my time at Forest was a frustrating time. I think I was then 29, and I think I'd met Roy Keane before. He'd come as a kid. I think he'd met us before the game at one of the first team games. I mean, we used to get players or kids come through who was 17 and come to a first team game, they'd meet us before the game, have a chat in the changing rooms, then watch the game with their parents. I think probably I met Roy before I'd met him on the staff when he actually arrived. But he was very confident as a 19-year-old kid. He came into a changing room of post-Italian 90 players, myself, Des and Stuart Pearce and all the top players. Webby had been there as well. I left before he'd gone to Man United by then. And Nigel Clough was an England player by then, I think. But he felt he was part of that straight away. And then I had a bad calf. I was getting older. And I had both my calves, the sheaths were cut years before that. And I got scar tissue, and every now and again they used to give me trouble. As I got older, it was just like a war wound. And on this year, I couldn't get my calves right, and he got in, and he didn't look back. And I say he had a great engine, and Cloughy loved him, and he scored goals. And I think he was the high point of a really average season for the football club, really. And he came through, and I had to just suffer it every week watching him do really well. And at the end of that season was the end of my contract, and I knew it was running down. And I got back in, probably around the March time, but he'd made his name by then and he was in. And we had a team meeting one day, and Cloughy came in one of his, for no reason, bad moods in the guest room. And we all sat down in a line. And he came in, and Steve Sutton was the first one in the line, and he had a go at all of us, one by one off the cuff. It was brilliant to watch, to be fair. You know, Steve Sutton catch across in his own way, and Stuart Pearce get a tackle in, and a bit louder than that. And he was just, it was brilliant to watch. He was just one off, and I got stick about never being fit. And right at the end was Roy Keane. And he got right to the end. We'd all got a mouthful of abuse. And he got to Keaney at the end. They looked at Keaney and went, Keaney, I love you, Irishman. And I remember being in the guest room thinking, my days here are numbered. this could be the end of it, because he likes the kid. The kid's in now and I'm not, and he's 19 and I'm 29 and I'm always injured. But Keeney got injured in the April before the cup final, 1991 cup final, the Gascoigne cup final, against my old team. So I thought, wow, I've had a bit of luck there. I've hung in all season, got myself fit, and it's the cup final, Keeney's injured. And week before the cup final, they played 4 days before the cup final, they played a reserve team game on here, I think against something like Rochdale or Shrewsbury. And Keeney hobbled through it, and I watched it as you would do, because I knew if he wasn't fit, I was playing the cup final. Cloughie had a rule as well that he always used to say, if you got the shirt and the team are doing well and you're doing well, you keep it. That's a club rule. I'd been there 10 years, I knew it off by heart. And the 4 games before the final, we played Liverpool, Arsenal, Notts County, I think in the friendly, and Newcastle United, and we won all 4. Or it might have been Leeds. Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, Notts County. I played in all 4, and Keeney was injured all the way through that. So it's a 2 days before the cup final. He hobbles through an hour of a reserve team game, and they're on the way down to the cup final on the bus. And I remember we were playing cards, and in the papers had been a debate about me or Keane, and I knew he wasn't totally fit. And we had a petition on the bus, like where curtains came down and the curtains came back. We were playing cards, and there was me, Piercy was facing me, Steve Sutton was there, and Nigel was here. We were playing cards. Cloughie came behind us. He went, Captain, here's the cup final team, and he threw a piece of paper, like a little ball, at Piercy, and this piece of paper fell on the floor. And this is not your average lineup. It's not your average game. This is in most people's career. That lineup is important. If there's a piece of paper on the floor that was flippantly thrown at the captain, and he dropped it. So it goes off the floor, the piece of paper, and Piercy gets it. And I thought, I'll look at Steve Sutton first, because Piercy will read it out, but Sutton will see it first. And he was facing me. So Piercy gets it, opens it up, and goes, I look at it, and Piercy, you can see it, right, Sutty's there straight away, and looked at Sutty, I've gone, kind of thing, what, am I in? And he's just gone. And I went, sure, have another look. And he went, and that was it. Not in. So the rules had changed. The kid was in, and the 10-year rule of if you have this shirt, you're in, was gone. So I didn't play that day. I was on the bench, and I was pleased to be on the bench, to be fair, because Lawsey was left out as well for Gary Charles, and Nigel Jemison was left out completely. And I played for an hour in the final. I met Lady Diana and Prince Charles and all that malarkey, but we lost the final again, 2-1. But that hurt. That one did hurt. The fact that the rules had changed and that Keeney wasn't totally fit. And only Keeney knows that. But on the day of the game, that wasn't the Roy Keane that I'd seen that season. I don't think he was totally fit. But I couldn't blame him. He was 19 playing a cup final. He come from nowhere from a year before. So yeah, he's going to just say, yeah, I'm fit. It was the manager's call. And obviously I'm biased, but I think on that day he got it wrong. The club got £1 million for me at 30 years of age nearly. Keeney came in, was brilliant for the club. I went to Leeds. We won the championship the following year at Leeds, the Premier, the last First Division. So sometimes when things happen like that, everyone actually ends up happy with it. Although at the time I wasn't. I went to Leeds, Cantona arrived, and McAllister and Speed and all that people, and Gordon Strachan, and we were champions. So a year later, everyone was happy the way it turned out, but the cup final was another disappointment. But you're going to get a few in your career. If you have a long career, you're going to get a few. I had a few, but I had a few good highlights as well along the way.